Welcome to The Lead from New Lines Magazine. I'm Kwangu Wa Liwewe, and this is a podcast where we delve into the biggest ideas, events, and personalities from around the world. Africa's most populous country and largest economy, Nigeria, goes to the polls tomorrow on February the 25th to elect its president, vice president, members of the Senate, and House of Representatives. This election is Africa's first in 2023 and has been described as the most consequential election this year. Nigeria is Africa's most populous nation and its largest economy. And when Nigeria sneezes, the rest of the continent catches a cold. With me today is Oby Ezekwesili, who is the former vice president of the World Bank Africa region. She's the senior economic advisor of the Africa Economic Development Policy Initiative and one of the co-founders and pioneer directors of Transparency International. She was recognized as one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in 2015. She was also decorated with the National Award of Commander of the Order of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Ma'am, thank you very much for joining us on The Lead.
Thank you very much. And it's Ezekwesili.
Thank you. So now this election has been described as Nigeria's most crucial and defining moment. It's attracted so much attention around the world, and it's completely unpredictable. What has sparked this anticipation?
I think it's the fact that we have had elections since 1999, ushering in the Fourth Republic for us, because as those who follow Nigeria's history will remember, we had many aberrant adventure of the military into our democracy after we became independent in 1960. And so we had much more militarization than quite a lot of the other countries on the continent. And so when finally in 1999 we went back to democracy, what we've seen since then has been a very strong focus on elections. We haven't had any kind of military misadventurism since then. And that has been the good side of what we have experienced. On the downside, however, is that elections have not materialized into the development for the citizens. And a lot of this has been because of the nature of the politics that we have seen since 1999. It has been politics of an established order of politicians who have had a way of putting their own personal and private narrow interests above that of the collective. And so suddenly we see that the citizens are tired of this, and there is much more interest of the citizens in launching a new trajectory for our democracy.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because politics has largely been dominated more by personalities in Nigeria, not really party ideologies. I mean, we've seen some politicians move from one party to another, and I can give some examples of the PDP's presidential hopeful, Atiku Abubakar. He contested for primaries in the APC in 2015. We've seen also one of the presidential candidates or hopefuls from the Labour Party, Peter Obi. He was once the vice presidential candidate and Atiku's running mate on a PDP ticket in 2019. Obi, of course, went on to be elected governor of Anambra on the All Progressive Grand Alliance in 2010. So just explain to us, why isn't this shifting of camps a big deal for the electorate, and why is it not really a big deal for the country?
Well, I suppose that, the electorate, for many years since 1999, in the 4 or 5 elections that we have thus far had, never really bothered that much about our politics. They always felt, the majority felt that their votes wouldn't count. There was low confidence in electoral integrity. And so a lot of people within the middle class of Nigeria paid no attention to elections. And so political parties, the epicenter of what happens in the electoral process, were therefore not of any interest amongst the electorate, except, of course, the low-income part of the electorate, who for them, elections were simply just a day to transact with very wily politicians who were prepared to buy up our democracy. And so you often therefore found that any conversations as to even those who were being put forward as candidates of parties did not really attract anybody's attention, because they were not planning to go out to vote for them, at least within the majority of the middle class. And suddenly, what we find is that the level of political literacy that has happened over time, complemented by the basic experiences of people in understanding that the less attention that citizens pay to democracy, the more that they should be ready to take any consequences of their absence from a process that is actually defined by the level of participation of the demand side of governance. And so, to that extent, you now begin to see a less emphasis on not participating. In the past, it was always, people actually boasted that they didn't waste their time to go and vote because they are all the same. That was the basic premise on which people didn't waste their times with our democracy. And it's not just in Africa. It's actually across the continent that the middle class just look at the democracy and say, no, this doesn't reflect what I would like to be part of. And so they opt out of it completely, leaving the low-income class and the political rascals to carry on with a hijacked democracy. That is changing, and it's a good thing. So when you say that the people were not, it didn't matter to the people, that there was always this migratory dance of the political class. The political class didn't matter to the citizens. That's really the truth. They didn't expect, they had come to a place of low expectation, or in fact, zero expectation of them. But now people are realizing that you citizens have to occupy their own office. And the citizen's office is what I call the office of the citizen. And that the citizen determines what happens in democracy. More of that has percolated in society. And so there's much more interest. But that interest is coming not by way, in fact, of the political party, although two of the dominant political parties are, they are the, what do you call them? The symbols of a failed governance. And so people just don't want, people who want a better society, who want a decent Nigeria, are not in fact interested in contemplating a vote for those two parties. They are dominant parties. That is where you find most of the politicians who have crisscrossed carpets so many times you hardly by afternoon or evening time know which party they belong to. So people are not paying that much attention to them. I mean, as in people who truly, in fact, are engaging democracy more profoundly at this time. However, what people are doing is they are looking at the quality of the candidates that have been put forward. And true to type, those two dominant political parties have put as their candidates for presidency two people that don't resonate with the culture of good governance that citizens want to see Nigeria move towards. And so, even though Obi is a part of the PDP in the past, the fact that his record shows a relative degree of having done some things around better governance, he has resonated with the electorate. And so they are paying attention to a little known party of that is called Labour Party in the past. Just in 8 months, Labour Party suddenly, has a lot of mention within our democracy, simply because Obi, that the people could at least relate to, joined that party. So make of that what you will.
Okay, so now one of the key debates in the run-up to the election has been this unwritten rule of rotating the presidency. This done on regional, ethnic, and religious grounds. It's an unwritten rule, as I've just said. And we've seen in each electoral cycle, parties rotate their candidates between the North and South, between the Christians and Muslim divide. So now in this election, and you've talked about the two dominant parties, People's Democratic Party, the PDP, and the All Progressive Congress. This time around, they've abandoned these policies, and both parties nominated a Muslim candidate for the presidency. While with the ACP, they have a double Muslim ticket with the vice being president, and PDP's vice is a Christian. Now, just explain to us about this unwritten rule and this zoning issue in Nigeria. Where does it come from?
It's not unusual. It's not a Nigerian thing. Even in a place called Switzerland, in federal structures, in federal systems, there is always this approach where for inclusivity, for inclusion, they sometimes have either a written or an unwritten rule for ensuring that no part of any of their country, of their nation, feels abandoned, feels not to be part of the process of governance. And so it is not unusual at all. It's not a Nigerian thing. So that is an important point for us to first establish. So when you say, where did that come from? I want to immediately do a repost on you and say, don't make it sound like it is an exceptionalism for Nigeria. It isn't. The second thing to say on that is that when the parties have those kinds of convention of saying that we want all parts of the Nigerian federation, all parts of the Nigerian multilingual, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society to feel that they have a stake in the nation. It comes also as part of, us having been a country that's been so polarized often by virtue of all of these divides. And so in order to ensure that we're continuing to move in that sense of one people, one nation, these parties chose to have this kind of a system of rotational allocation of responsibilities, whether as party leaders or as candidates. And so it was working pretty fine. I served in the government of the PDP under President Obasanjo, and I remember how they used to pay so much attention to this balancing, the balancing on the religious side, on the zonal side, on the regional side, on the language side. They took all kinds of variables into consideration. And in many ways, it did help keep parties in a national frame that was necessary. And the more national a party was in its orientation, the more interest it garnered from the rest of the society. And so PDP was quite dominant at that time because it paid attention to those to that convention. Now, that being said, what was not normally an important part of that conversation is that you must not compromise competence on the altar of inclusion. You can achieve both objectives. You can ensure that competent people, capable people, ethical people are the ones that emerge as your candidates, and yet you have respected the rotation, so that no exclusion, no sense of exclusion is felt, or no compromise of capacity to govern is made. Now the PDP failed in that phenomenally in this election. When they had their primaries, everybody was shocked that an Atiku was, determined to go through and be the presidential candidate at a time when the entire country was expecting that after 8 years of a northerner being in office, that a southerner would be in office. So PDP ran foul of its own convention, and it's in fact its own constitution, party constitution. And then the APC even worsened the stakes, because APC not only fielded a candidate who is from the Southwest, having in utter disregard for the fact that a Southwesterner has been the vice president for the 8 years of a Buhari presidency. They not only did that foul, they also basically, I'm looking for the right English word to use, but they basically thumped they basically gave a, a, an absolute okay, I think that I found the word. They became contemptuous of the Christian population by fielding two Muslim candidates on their ticket at a time when religious polarization has been so bad in the country. Even when we were less polarized, no parties were very careful not to field two Muslim tickets. There was a time when we actually had two Muslim candidates on a party, or two Muslim candidates on a party. This was when Abiola and King Gibe, both Muslims, but this was immediately following the end of military rule in 1993. Although that government eventually, that election was annulled, but it was a candidate, it was a ticket that had two Muslims, and Nigerians couldn't care and voted overwhelmingly for them. So they were the ones that won that election, although Abiola went on to pay for that election with his life after it was annulled, and he was insistent on reclaiming his mandate. But after we have seen the polarization, the deterioration of religious harmony in our society, there has been a very strong interest in avoiding having two Muslims on a ticket. So that was why Buhari refused to run with this current presidential candidate of their party, that is Bola Tinubu. He refused to run with him as his vice presidential, candidate because of Muslim sensitivities rather, and now they have breached it in this case. So Nigerians who are Christians feel like this is a disregard of another 50% of the population. Why would the APC do that in an environment where Christians have a lot that they have complained about over the last 8 years of President Buhari's presidency? So that's what these parties are up against. There are people who decidedly have said they will not vote them, not because they really are into this religious matter, but that they are into the idea of being sensitive to the issues that matter to your citizens. If your citizens feel like it's important for inclusion, that you should have a candidate who is Muslim and a candidate who is Christian on your ticket, then you should be able to be sensitive to that and not offend their sensibilities. If your population feel like, a northerner has been in office for so long, it is really time for a southeasterner, not just a southerner, but a southeasterner to get an opportunity in all competence and capacity and, of course, ethics to run for office, then why field a northerner? That it is actually a spiteful attitude towards the people from the southeast. So that's what these parties, that's another burden that they carry into the elections.
Oh, yes. So going forward, do you think these two dominant parties will be hit badly for ignoring this?
I think it is going to matter to a significant segment of the population, the voting population. We would see how it comes out after the elections. But, the two dominant parties have never before felt as vulnerable as they feel today. And that's because there are many things. The pattern of failure that people have seen of the two dominant parties in the last at least 16 years really point to the fact that citizens are tired of simply repeating and rinsing electoral cycles. So they want elections that lead to governance, not just governance, but good governance, and the benefits of having a democratic processes. So accountability, economic growth, human capital development, infrastructure to support their needs as citizens as well as businesses, a better environment for doing business, just the basics that you'd expect of any decent society that is properly governed. That's people are needing that. So there's a strong appetite for someone who can offer that, different from the usual established political order. And then there is the vulnerability that comes to them from the younger people who are tired of seeing the same old, same people running for office. So they want a break from the old. They want a new era of their democracy. So the young are really defining the moment in this current run of our democracy. Another thing is that people are just tired of parties that are insensitive to the opinion, to the demands of citizens. So when they look at these parties, they feel like these parties have become so entrenched. They feel that they can run roughshod over the electorate. And the electorate seems to be saying we've come of age and we're not going to just sit like lame dogs and allow this again. So the vulnerability that they feel today is worse than anything they felt in the past. And we see that demonstrated. The evidence of that is in having a third party that has such name recognition and such traction than we have ever seen in our elections.
Okay, so yes, it's interesting. You did talk briefly just now about the youth and their role in this election. We've seen that they've become really revitalized, especially coming out of the EndSARS movement, where they led protests against the special anti-robbery squad that was known for its brutality and, of course, accusations of extrajudicial killings and assaults. The youth seem to be re-energized in Nigeria. Just tell us, how crucial is this for the polls?
This is very important for the polls because, I mean, some 44% of the electorate are this segment of the population demographic that you talked about. So they are young people loosely defined as those under the age of 40. So from voting age of 18 to 40, if you have some 44%, and they are the ones that dominantly make up the new registered voters in this round of our election. So you can see that is statistically significant. When you add to them women who are much more vibrant in this election and determined to see a different delivery, a better delivery of governance for the sake of the well-being of families, then you know clearly that we are up for something that could, at the minimum, be a runoff. I believe that there would be no clear winners in the first round. That's what I think. If all things go according to the level of electoral integrity that I expect from INEC, our Independent Electoral Commission, then I don't think that there would be a definite winner in the first round of the election.
Okay, now moving on, in terms of voter turnout, in 2019, there was about 34% turnout. That was the percentage then. And from, let's say, around 2003, this has been dropping, the number of voters turning out. As much as it's difficult to predict, you're there on the ground. What's the feeling on the ground? This time around, will Nigerians come out in full force?
I think Nigerians want to come out in full force. Something a factor that would determine that would also be the level of security that is assured. And I think to that extent, we've been seeing a lot of military movement around the country, perhaps to make sure that those who are prone to using violence as a means of voter suppression would not succeed. So if security is assured, I am pretty sure that we're going to get many many degrees of increase in the voter turnout. At 34%, we woefully compare to an average of 60% globally, I believe. And so, I mean, I remember that at the advent of our democracy in 1999, there was, there was this sense of anticipation. And so I think we were beyond the 47 or almost 52% mark, and then it began to dwindle after the about 3 rounds of elections. We now began to go below 40%. To the point of being 34% in the last one. So people came to a place where they said, it really doesn't matter whether I vote or not. And well, it is a different conversation that we see going on in the country, where citizens are saying, my vote will make all the difference. And so the priciest thing that people have in their possession today is their PVCs, that is the permanent voters card. And people take the delight in publishing it and saying, I have stored it away. It is the most important treasure that I want to use on the 25th of February. So we will see. We'll see.
Yes, you've just said people are actually saying my vote will make a difference. Now, there's another catchphrase in Nigeria doing its rounds. That is, vote your conscience. What exactly does this mean?
Well, I suppose that what people are saying is, don't be carried away by a whole lot of other factors that the politicians willfully try to use in manipulating the electorate. Sometimes it's about money. They pay off for people's vote, and then people vote against themselves. Citizens who should care about the capacity or the ethics or the competence of a candidate, they stop caring just because, on a rational mode basis, where they need to survive for a day, and on the day of election, it's just a day. It's not. They are not thinking of it as a decision or a choice that has a 4-year consequence or a benefit of any kind. So they sell their votes, and so people say to them now, don't go and be persuaded by this filthy lucre that these politicians will give to you, and then you vote against your conscience. If you know that a candidate will not deliver governance that is beneficial to you and your family, to you and your children, to your future, why should you vote for them? Vote what your conscience tells you is the right thing to do. And also, when people, some of the politicians have made this a terrible election around ethnic groups. So there's an ethnicization of people's choices. They have used all kinds of rhetorics of ethnocentrism to project their own suitability for votes from people of their own regions. So it's been a real shame to see that kind of a descent to very primordial, canvassing for vote.
Okay. Yes, you have talked about vote buying, and previous elections have been marred by these allegations. This election in 2023, what's it been like in terms of vote buying?
How can I tell? I only believe in evidence. I am not a vote buyer, neither am I a vote seller. So, and we haven't seen anything in the public sphere that provides on it. So it's a wrong question to ask at this time.
But there's the cash fiasco that's currently going on ahead of the elections. Just To give some background, it was brought about when the Central Bank of Nigeria announced that the country will move to a cashless economy and that the current Naira notes will no longer be valid in days close to the elections. So this brought about a serious cash shortage, and it forced the president to direct the central bank to reissue the old notes. Now, one school of thought says this initial move was just to deal with targeting politicians to deter them from vote buying. What are your thoughts on this?
Certainly, I mean, one of the things that the central bank actually put out, it did say that, the policy was going to help also with curtailing the activities of politicians at a time like this. Well, that should be the least of a central bank's monetary process, right? Monetary objectives, but be that as it may, it turns out that, instead of using the institutions of the state that exist to investigate, determine, to investigate, identify, and prosecute criminals, we have ended up the monetary policy being used to do that. Frankly speaking, there are quite a number of our citizens that are okay with it, because for them it is really, they are really tired of their democracy being hijacked through, what do you call it, looted resources by politicians. Most of our politicians have not worked hard. They have not done any form of a credible investment or engaged in any productivity to actually justify the kind of wealth that they have. So they have stolen from government, treasury, and then they use it to purchase the democracy. That particular aspect of our democracy upsets a lot of the young people. And so for them, it's almost like, anything to get rid of these politicians, or anything to reduce their capacity to turn the election into a vote buying a specter of vote buying activities. The thing though is that in the process, a lot of the very low income group are suffering. People who the market women who don't have the technology for any form of digital or electronic payment systems are not doing business, and the lack of access to cash is affecting quite a lot of people. And this is going to filter into Nigeria's productivity over this period. And so our economic growth that already took a dent is going to, be further dented by this monetary policy fiasco. So this is a situation of, prisoner's dilemma. It's a catch-22. There are no easy answers to this. In a recent interview I did, I said, well, the way that we are now, it just means that citizens are going to bear this for 5 more days, and then we'll see what happens, following after, because the monetary authorities have to get the country back to its economic path.
Yes, and one of the challenges that the country is facing is insecurity. If we look at all the geopolitical zones in the country, each has its own unique security challenge. How crucial is this issue for the elections?
It's very crucial. I mean, without security, it is difficult to get people out to vote. And there's hardly any region of our country now that's not up in one form of insecurity or the other. But one of the things that I know from my days at the World Bank is that even the conflict-ridden environments do manage to hold elections. And so at a certain level, if we can get a very effective collaboration between citizens and the security establishments, as well as if we can get the political parties and their politicians behaving responsibly and keeping away from stoking unnecessary violence amongst the citizens, we would be able to have a peaceful election. It is entirely possible, yes.
Okay. And looking at the body that obviously oversees the elections, which is INEC. In previous elections, we know there have been some questions raised about its credibility. This time around, how do you gauge INEC's credibility and whether they'll be able to, foresee a free, fair, and credible election?
Well, I think that, logistics and just managing the operational process of elections have always been a problem in the past, even leading up to the up until the 2019 elections. 2011 elections were postponed. Some even when some polls, some parts of the country were already voting, suddenly that election was postponed. 2015 election was postponed. 2019 election was postponed. And this is 2023. And one of the nervousness amongst the electorate is that they might just wake up to a postponement of the election, and people don't want to see that happen, simply because every time that elections are postponed, it deflects the people so badly that some of them just move on and say, I'm not going out again. And that's not good. So in getting the logistics as well as the operational plan to work, to function top notch this time around, we have seen INEC do every form of reaching out to central bank, so that what do you call it, our monetary policy around cashless policy does not affect its activities, affect its ability to pay the vendors that it requires for the elections. We've seen it reach out to, the chairman of INEC said he got the assurance of the central bank governor that they would have access to the monies that they require for their operations. The matter of movements of election materials, they need a lot of relationship between INEC and providers of transportation. We've seen them try to do that. So in the public domain, what we've seen is a lot of frenetic activities on the part of INEC, and so people are closely following all of these. The one that is outside of their immediate control is the matter of security that we spoke about earlier, and so if we can keep the country still calm until election day without any kind of violence breaking out in parts of the country, that would also be helpful. So in terms of logistics and operations, we are seeing the work of INEC. People are not sure about it entirely, but they are prepared to believe. Now, where INEC has gained a lot more credibility is on the fact that the INEC Act amendment that happened toward the end of last year was such a morale boost for the electorate, especially the young people. The fact that a provision for the electronic transmission of votes was passed in that act really buoyed up the confidence of citizens in our electoral process, even though it suffered a little bit of a dent following the judgment that happened at a lower court recently on the concerning the Osun elections. But people are still holding out that the use of technology, the beavers, the deployment of the beavers, the fact that the votes will be counted in the glare of everyone and uploaded immediately, meaning the electronic transmission as approved in that act, that is giving people some measure of confidence in INEC. We'll see. They say the taste of the pudding is in the eating. So let's wait and see what happens after we all vote on the 25th of February.
Okay, and you have mentioned concerns about violence possibly, breaking out. But my question to you now is, why is a peaceful election so crucial to the country, and what are the implications to the rest of the continent? I did say earlier on in my intro that when Nigeria sneezes, the rest of the continent catches a cold.
Well, Nigeria and South Africa are the two anchor countries of the continent. You may not know this, but for every 1% of economic growth in either of the two countries, that is in either Nigeria or in or South Africa or in both of them at any given year, it has a 0.5% growth effect for the rest of the continent. So these are two economies that are so important for the continent. And so the democratic processes in each of these two countries should matter to the rest of the continent. We do know that the democratic order is an important order because, democracy is about freedom. And if, that freedom also translates to economic freedom, then you begin to see economic growth. And we know that one thing in development studies is without peace, you cannot get to development. Without economic growth, you cannot ultimately achieve development. And so all of these things are so interconnected that it is vital, it is critical for us to have a peaceful election. Nigeria is too big to fail. We need to conduct ourselves and show that we've come to a place of democratic maturity, at least at the standard of being able to conduct elections. And when there are challenges to our elections, to seek redress through the courts, although the courts are less, they are giving the citizens less confidence than used to be the case. But it's still important that we use peaceful means to resolve disagreements in democracy.
Okay. And finally, just to take you away from the elections, let's look at one of the institutions you worked for. That's the World Bank. And I want to pick your brain on this one. So the president of the World Bank, he's stepping down on June the 30th. This is a year before the end of his term. What is the likelihood of an African getting this position? What are your thoughts on this?
I think that, we're at a place now. We're at a place in the international development architecture where, a new conversation on how that architecture is governed it cannot just simply be the usual talk. It has to be action speaking louder than voice. And the right action that would speak louder is to make sure that everyone, especially Africans, especially people other than those who are from Europe and who are from America, are the leaders of the Bretton Woods institution. So I definitely believe that it is time for our continent to make a strong bid for that office of the president of the World Bank. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Oby Ezekwesili, thank you very much. This has been The Lead from New Lines Magazine. You can find Oby Ezekwesili on Twitter at ObyZex. This week's episode was produced by Faisal Al-Yafai and hosted by me, Kwangu Wa Liwewe. For more like this, subscribe to The Lead on your favorite podcast app or visit our website, newlinesmag.com. Thanks for joining us.